Cool. Did we have some more pickup other than one viewing?
Yeah, we had about, I think, 11 at the most is what I saw. Okay. So there's 5 on right now, but yeah, there was about 11 people at one point.
Cool. Okay. Well, good. That makes me feel a little bit better that I just didn't have one measly little fan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon, and it is fantasy football season. Have you added us to your starting lineup yet? Go ahead, hit that subscribe button and basically just listen to every new episode as we come out every Thursday. Now, this past week, we had a great experience at Maker's Mark doing our private 46 blend. We ended up choosing a pretty unique combination. We hit every single stave. Thanks to all the Patreon supporters that came out and helped us. And thank you once again to Keg and Bottle out of the SoCal, San Diego area for giving us the opportunity to be able to do this. So if you want access to be able to come on Barrel Picks, as well as a chance to be able to buy this bottle that we have named, I didn't get that email because, a long story short, Ryan said that twice while we were actually there, saying he didn't get the email when he certainly did. But make sure you go and sign up at patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit, and also go check out Keg and Bottle, KEG, the letter N, bottle.com, and you can get over 700 plus different spirits shipped right to your door. Now, if you're still worried about, well, I don't know if there's anything left for me in the year, well, we still have signups available to come on our Knob Creek Bourbon and Rye selections that are going to be happening next month. And we've already drawn our selections for our next 2 barrel picks. And who knows, you could be next. And also a special shout out to our followers that are listening in the, or should I say, Patreon supporters in the Washington, D.C. and Virginia area, because they are going to be choosing the barrel for us, because they can just head on over to Joseph A. Magnus and do it. So looking forward to some barrel proof MGP. Going to be hitting our Patreon pages soon. So last week, we also drew our winners for our Facebook drawing to be able to give away tickets to Bourbon and Beyond. So congrats to Cindy Terry, who won the GA ticket pair, and Robert Magnus, who won the Mint VIP package. So congratulations, you two. Can't wait to see you all in Louisville Champions Park, September 22nd and 23rd for Bourbon and Beyond. Now, this podcast is going to be one out there for the Wild Turkey fans, because we have got the super fan, known as David Jennings, also AKA RareBird101, AKA, I don't know, I can't really go on from there, but this is the man that is obsessed with wild turkey. So anybody that wants to know the ins and outs of why barrels were better back then, or what Jimmy was doing versus what Eddie's doing versus what does he think is the best bang for your buck when it comes to turkey these days, this is going to be the podcast for you. So shout out to David. Make sure you go and you check out his website, RareBird101.com. He also has another Patreon support as well, so you can go check out RareBird101 on Patreon, because he's got a lot of other cool things that he's offering there. So make sure you go and you support him as well, because this is all bourbon. We need support to be able to go through all this. And if you like the show, make sure you check us out on all 3 of the majors for social media: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're always posting stuff, and Instagram is just blowing up. We just crossed over 11,000 followers. I think we're going to get 40,000 at some point. That's the next goal, and we're going to get there. So make sure you go and you subscribe or follow us on Instagram, because you can see what we're drinking any of the night of the week. And so with that, I would say here's Above the Char with Fred Minnick. However, we have to give a special shout out to Fred, because this week he had his new baby boy enter the world. So congratulations to Fred as he takes a little bit of time off to go and spend time with his family. And this is my attempt at Above the Char. The birth of Fred's new boy reminded me of a question I always get being the host of this show. As the bourbon train keeps chugging along, people become mesmerized and perplexed with bourbon. And at some point, they usually ask, when is this whole thing going to go south? Well, here's a newsflash for you. Not anytime soon, as far as I can see. But how does this relate to childbirth, you say? We'll get to that. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably consider yourself educated because you spend your day listening to a few geeks talk about bourbon. But you're also that person in the family everyone points to when there's a bourbon question. Hell, you've probably even led a family bourbon tasting at some point. But this education serves a purpose. You're helping drive adoption and continue the rise. A new bourbon drinker is born with every new family member you lead along the way, or when you give your opinion on one of the many Facebook forums. In addition, bourbon headlines are filled every week with distilleries investing for expansion. Heaven Hill and Wild Turkey are building monster rickhouses that hold upwards of 50,000 barrels, while Sazerac is investing $1.2 billion in its facilities over the next 10 years. The craft market alone is at an annual growth rate of 40%, with over 1,300 distilleries currently operating and more being added by the day. In 2016, this was a $6.3 billion business, and now 2025 projections put it somewhere around $80 billion. To my untrained eye, it looks like a new barrel is born every minute, but in this case, it might be every second. And then there's the Pappy Index. Well, at least that's what I call it. The return on value for some higher-end bottles is continually growing. According to Bottle Blue Book, in 2014, an Old Rip Van Winkle's secondary value was near $250. Now just a mere 4 years later, it's almost doubled, hitting a $450 value. Bourbon stock is on the rise, and lots of people are cashing in on their early bets. But for those late to the game, they're doing what they can to get their hands on a bottle, because with money like this, a flipper is born every minute. And at the same time, so is a sucker with more dollars and cents. But then you say, isn't there a bourbon shortage? No, we'll save that question for another segment. Until next time, this is Kenny filling in for Fred Minnick on Above the Char. If you have a suggestion for an Above the Char segment, send an email, team@bourbonpursuit.com. Now sit back and enjoy this week's episode.
Play Whiskey Wednesday Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny here today, and we are talking about a subject that is a pretty common thing that we see in everybody's bourbon collection. You know, we've had the master distillers of this distillery on quite a few times. We've heard their story. We've heard them talk about the Christmas Rye or cheesy gold foil. And if you know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about Wild Turkey. It's one of everybody's favorites. We had an episode a long time ago where we did a barrel pick of Russell's Reserve while we were walking inside of all the rick houses, and got to hear Jimmy drop a bunch of good knowledge on us. And today we're going to hear, I think the best way to categorize our guest today is probably a super fan of Wild Turkey is probably the best way to put it. And so that's a good segue into introducing our guest and kind of kicking this off. So today we have Dave Jennings. Dave is a blogger at RareBird101.com. He's also very famous for all of his Wild Turkey photos that you're going to see on Instagram. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here.
Good deal. So, before we get started talking about Wild Turkey and sort of what got you into it, talk about your bourbon journey. Is there something that really kind of got you hooked into bourbon in itself?
Yeah, it goes back to my college days, which was like mid-'90s. And I always appreciated a Jim and Coke. That was kind of my drink of choice. Sometimes it'd be Jack and Coke or Crown and Coke or something like that. And that continued for a while. And then sometime around 2013 or so, I was at my brother-in-law's house, and he had a special edition Crown Royal. I think it was an XR or something. And he asked me if I wanted to pour. And I said, sure. And I was expecting it in a Coke or something. And it was just over ice. And I tried it, and I was like, wow, this is really nice, And that kind of got me started into, well, maybe I should start looking at branching out and just, trying whiskeys, without it being a mixer. And I would go to the liquor store, and I would maybe pick up pints of whatever. It didn't matter, Scotch or, blended whiskey, whatever. And I just started burning through them. And somewhere along the line between 2013, 2015 or so, I really zeroed in on bourbon. And I kept coming back to Wild Turkey because a lot of times I'd go pick up a nice bottle, I don't know, like something, mid-price, like Willet Pot Still or something. And I would always ask for a pint of Wild Turkey 101 because it was just a nice daily sipper, and I'd just keep going back to it. And
I thought you were about to say you chased your Willet Pot Still with Wild Turkey 101 or something like that.
I mean, I went through everything. I would anything I could find. I was on Sour Mash Manifesto all the time, Red, White, and Bourbon. Some of these older blogs that just were great, And I would binge read them. And I mean, I would pick out what I was going to get that week. I'd get paid, and I'd go to the local, and I'd try something new. And I went through a ton, but I kept going back to Wild Turkey. And one day I was online on RareBird, talking about how much I enjoyed, Wild Turkey 101 so much. And someone said, hey, have you ever had Dusty, Wild Turkey? And I was like, no. And he sent me a couple samples. It was an 81 101 8-year and a 92 Cheesy Goldful. And when I finally got that 81 in, I took my first nose and sip, and I was mesmerized. I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is just some killer juice here. And I started off just burning through the Wild Turkey catalog, trying to find something comparable, to that Dusty, which, as you know, is not realistic, but and before you know it, like all the other bourbons I was chasing just started fading away, and I just kept zeroing in on Wild Turkey, and that's where I'm at today. I mean, I still appreciate other pours, and I'll buy like Knob Creek single barrels and this type of thing, but I always go back to Wild Turkey. It's just my thing, and it's what I enjoy. I love the profiles, and so that's kind of a general how I got to where I'm at now. The blog came about. I just been writing a lot of reviews for RareBird, and I thought, well, maybe I need to put these somewhere. Outside of that subreddit,
where they don't get buried in a day. Yeah.
And I never really intended it to be anything big. It was private for a while. I mean, I had it private for a good 4 or 5 months, I think, where no one could view it, And I finally just flipped the switch and turned it on and just started mentioning it in some of the reviews I'd publish. And next thing you know, I had Aaron Goldfarb, who's a writer for Esquire, Whiskey Advocate, Punch Drink. He reached out to me. He was doing an article on Wild Turkey Funk, and he had a lot of questions for me. And that just led to some more connections and some more exposure with that Punch Drink article. And it just kind of went from there. But it's something I enjoy doing. I enjoy writing and I enjoy bourbon. So it's perfect, you know.
So I guess what still keeps you interested in Wild Turkey, right? I mean, at this point, is it new releases, or is it? I mean, because it sounds like you've gone through a lot of the catalog. Yeah. But what kind of still keeps you interested in still being a super fan of Wild Turkey?
Well, there's a lot. That's a big question. I mean, to start with, it really, the profiles are a big deal for me. I enjoy. It's like Wild Turkey has this one bourbon recipe and the one rye recipe. But this one recipe produces so many different profiles. It's amazing. You can go buy, 3 different Russell's Reserve single barrels and end up with 3 completely different, to me at least, 3 completely different bourbons. Unlike something like Four Roses, which I love Four Roses, but they have 10 recipes. And Wild Turkey has a great high quality variance with that single recipe. And so I chase these profiles. I try to find the most unique single barrels. As far as the standard line, 101, is just a everyday nice quality pour. The 101 Rye is my favorite Kentucky rye at this price point. But aside from the profiles, I think that there's just a genuine, I don't know how to explain it, but there's something very genuine about Wild Turkey. That you just don't find in a lot of the other distilleries. It has a very family vibe. I know it's owned, by Campari, but it has a real nice family vibe. I like that it's kind of the underdog. You have Wild Turkey traditionally has been looked at as kind of the roughnecks, the rock star, the old man's whiskey. And, I had, when I was in college, I was in Carolina band. And the musical director always had a bottle of Wild Turkey 8-year, behind him. And it was the big joke. We'd laugh about how, he drinks Wild Turkey. And we're going back and, chugging cheap beer, And he, the whole time he knew that there was quality there. And I think a lot of people have missed that due to this reputation. And I think that, the brand's coming around. I think that they're doing some things to change that. There's a lot more presence in print media and these types of things, the television commercials, and McConaughey's changing that a little bit. But there's just there's a genuine quality to it that I don't find in a lot of the other distilleries. And so I think when you take that and that family vibe and the profiles that I enjoy so much, it's really hard for me to branch out. I mean, I do try other things, I really do. But there's just something there that pulls me, and I enjoy it.
And so I guess one thing that I forgot to mention, so you're from South Carolina too, right?
That's right.
So are you a Gamecock?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really big into sports. I mean, I'll admit I'm not a big sports guy. But yeah, I'll pull for the Gamecocks any day.
Well, I was about to say, do you think there's some sort of some connection in the back of your mind you haven't figured out yet, that since you're a Gamecock and then Wild Turkey, they're in the same family? Maybe that's what brought you together.
Maybe. I don't know. It's something, there is something maybe Southern to it. They say that the story goes that Wild Turkey, was based on a hunting trip, to South Carolina. Some say North Carolina, but most sources say South Carolina. And so there is an origin story here too. But like I said, the profiles are the main thing. If I didn't like the way it tasted, I wouldn't drink it, and I wouldn't write about it. It's hard for me to write about something that I don't feel passionate about. And I feel passionate about Wild Turkey. Is every expression phenomenal? No. There's hits and misses. But for the most, I can appreciate, everything they released to some degree.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about some of those here in different expressions in a minute. I kind of want to just get an idea that if people have never been to your blog before, kind of, you had mentioned you were writing some things on Our Bourbon, which is a subreddit for anybody that's still trying to navigate the world of technology and bourbon.
Right.
But if they just go to RareBird101.com, what would they expect to see?
You're mainly going to see reviews. I mean, the majority of what I publish on a weekly basis is a review of a particular expression. Sometimes I'll do comparisons. Sometimes they're blind. And then every once in a while, I might write an article related to, I don't know, the best of last year. Or I had one that was, if you're a whiskey newbie, here's how to get into wild turkey. Here's how you should approach it. But for the most, it's going to be reviews. There is some information there. I have a timeline going back to the 1830s that a lot of people have enjoyed. There is a page, how to decipher bottle codes. It's the early bottles. You can just look for a stamp, or you can look at tax strips and these types of things. But when you get to like the 90s forward, if you want to date a bottle of wild turkey, you're going to need to know how to interpret the laser code. That is not my own discovery. I'll admit that there was a Redditor, Yu Komori, who spent a lot of time deciphering these codes. And he did it through Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit, because Kentucky Spirit gives you the date it was bottled. So by comparing that to the laser code, you see where you go there. And but I asked him. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I publish kind of a shortened version on my website?" He was fine with that. And I do link back to our Bourbon post where he originally did that. But that's what they're going to really find on my website, is mostly reviews, and then some information that can guide you through dating your bottle or the timeline for the company, that type of thing.
Now, when you're doing the history and finding bottle codes and stuff like that, I mean, is that something that you find is just super interesting in yourself that you want to continue to learn more about? Or was it a way to just kind of fill in some gaps of more than just reviews? Like, what would you look at that as?
Well, it's like this. I noticed that when you start hitting the 2000s, the label that was run for the 2000s before we got into the codes and this type of thing, that there was a lot of inconsistency. I'll admit. I mean, if you try Wild Turkey 101 in that 2000 range, you might have two bottles that can taste completely different. Yeah, I don't really know exactly why that is. I know that things started changing. The Cypress tanks had been changed out to steel tanks, and entry proofs changed mid 2000s, although that didn't really affect things till the age. But, maybe Eddie was on the road a lot. I don't know. I know that there was bottling facilities in Indiana, and then there was bottling done in Arkansas. So there was a lot of travel. And there's Jimmy's on record saying that he did not like the whiskey traveling such a far distance, that he felt like it maybe messed with it. I don't know. So how I wanted to approach that was, if I can date these bottles, maybe I can kind of figure out a pattern as to why there's some inconsistency there. Not that it's bad, but there is some inconsistency. And it did help with that. I mean, I can kind of draw out maybe how things changed a little bit. I mean, you'll have a bottle every once in a while, you'll be like, wow, that's a little odd. But for the most, it moves from what I would call a classic profile to more of the modern profile. And now that we have the codes, you can follow that trail.
I could only imagine maybe your bourbon bunker looks like you've got different posters hanging up, and you've got pins with yarn, and like you got all these like traces that you're trying to figure out and try to connect these dots together or something.
Yeah, that's all in my head. I don't think my wife would put up with that. I'd be committed if I had something like that. It's bad enough that I keep taking over new cabinets. It's like it's amazing, how quickly a collection can grow. I mean, I've probably given away 30 to 50 bottles just in the last year, just to make room, for more, because, I can't have the whole house. Some of these guys, they have like a room, and it's like the room is the bunker, I can't do that. I have maybe 100 bottles, 120 bottles or so. And I probably have maybe 50 open right now. But yeah, it's you would think I'd have something like that, but no, all that's in my head.
It just gives you a reason to build an extension or buy a new house. That's all it is.
Might start looking.
So I kind of want to focus some more on some of those reviews that you've done, because I've seen you do things that are, like some like really turkey unicorns that are there from like, the tradition, the split labels, Christmas Rye,
right,
all the way to just some standard Russell Reserve picks. So at this point, do you have any standout favorites that you've had over the course of trying all these different ones?
Well, my sentimental favorite, I have a top 10 on my blog, and anyone can look at that and kind of see what I feel like in my top 10. My sentimental favorite is that 81 1018 that was my first Dusty, and it's my number one on my top 10, and I can't take it down. Every time I want to move that, I'm like, God, it was just such a great experience, and I think that's what it's about. I mean, a lot of people have their top 10s, and I'm not saying this is the best, whiskey ever made. I'm saying that was my number one, and that's my number one right now. But some of my favorites I love the 2 whiskey jubilees I had from the Jewish whiskey company. Just a barrel strength single barrel wild turkey is just amazing. And you've been to the distillery, so you've tasted straight from the barrel, and you know what an experience that is. It's a shame that has not been done since donut, which is another one of my favorite expressions. Kentucky legend, people call it donut. And, that is just an amazing thing to have that single barrel strength. I love the cheesy gold foils always. 90 right now is my favorite. That's one I have open. I blind tasted it. I didn't even know I was tasting cheesy gold foil. Somebody sent me some samples and said, these are wild turkey. Tell me what's your favorite. And I thought one of them was a export 12-year and the other might be a split label or something like that. But one of them, my favorite, ended up being a 1990 cheesy gold foil. So I'm like, I got to get this because it was so great. But if I had to say one that I think is probably the best wild turkey expression, if I take away the sentimental stuff, there was a master distiller selection that was released in 2006 in Japan. It's a 14-year expression, not like the tradition. I mean, it has some similarities to it. It is killer. And I probably shouldn't say this. I mean, it's gone now.
You just screwed yourself out of $1,000 trying to get the bottles again.
Yeah, oh well. No, but it's fantastic. I mean, it's just everything you could want in a whiskey. I mean, just period. I mean, I'd put it up against anything outside of the brand. I mean, it's phenomenal. Those are some of my favorites. As far as the stuff you can go find in the store, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel is my favorite. And I love going out and finding private selections and comparing them. And that's just a fun thing to do for me. I always have 101 Rye. 101 Rye is just, like I said earlier, it's my favorite of the Kentucky Ryes in that price range. And then I really like the new Rare Breed a lot. The 116.8 Rare Breed, the brand new one. It's nice. I mean, it's become my new 101. I hate to say that, but I think that everyone should have 101 in their cabinet. But if they had to have some other wild turkey expressions, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, 101 Rye, and Rare Breed 116.8, you need those. Those all, to me, feel nice niches.
Well, I think it's also just a steady degree of growing as a bourbon drinker. We've said it all the time on the show that you'll start with something, you'll venture into it, right? I mean,
right.
Wild Turkey 101 was your way into it.
That's right.
And it's, you're no longer mixing with ice, and then now you're getting a barrel proof, and you're not even putting ice in barrel proof anymore. It's just a gradual progression of a.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so you had mentioned it a few times, and it just kind of just throw it off the wall because, you see people mention cheesy gold foil all the time because people are obsessed with it.
That's right.
What do you think it is about cheesy gold foil? Like, is it the label? Is it really that much better of a wild turkey expression? Like, what, in your opinion, like, what is it about it that's so attractive to a lot of people?
Well, have you had it before? Have you ever tried it?
I've actually got a sample in the basement, and okay. I might have to try it later tonight now because of talking about this.
You will answer your own question when you taste it. It's just an amazing profile. It has a very mature and complex quality to it. And it's a very easy sipper, but it maintains its power. So the best way I can describe it is it has everything you'd want in a dusty bourbon. It has everything that you would want in a bourbon over 100 proof. It has everything you'd want in a bourbon that you would consider mature and complex. I think that it's got juice older than 12 years in it. I really think so. And it's dark as can be. I mean, it's notable. You'll see when you pour. But there is just something about it. It has a very strong herbal perfume type of nose to it. that's unique to Cheesy Gold Foil. I say unique to Cheesy Gold Foil. You can find it in Beyond Duplication, which was the release prior to Cheesy Gold Foil. The 12-year release prior to that was Beyond Duplication. You can find it in that. And you can find it a little in the split label too, depending on the year. But there's just a nice complexity, maturity. It's balanced. It's everything you would want in a bourbon whiskey. And it's hard to believe that thing sat on shelves, just sitting there all those years. And now, I mean, look at what it's priced at now. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. And, we've had the opportunity to go and talk to Jimmy a few times, and Eddie as well. And Jimmy always, because we ask him, we're like, oh, like Dusty Wild Turkeys, it's bar none. But Jimmy is pretty astute in the fact that he says, nothing's changed. Other than entry proof, right?
Right.
But I mean, it sounds like you think Dusty Wild Turkey's better than today's expressions, right?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's better. It's more unique. But if you go and look at my reviews and you read the ratings and this type of thing, just because it's Dusty doesn't mean it's better. It's just different. So there's profiles, and I have a profile chart on my site. And I think that some modern releases do just as well in their profile as the Dusty does in its. And I've had some, Dusty Wild Turkey 8 years that I've been like, it's okay. Like I have a 94 101 8-year, and it's good. I mean, it's great. Would I pay a lot for it? Probably not. I'd probably just rather have a nice Russell's Reserve single barrel private select, and I'm going to be just as happy, if not happier. So I think that what they're making now is not the same, and I'm not contradicting Jimmy here. I don't want to do that. Jimmy's Jimmy, and he's the man. But I think that there have been some changes. I mean, like you went from cypress tanks to steel tanks. You've got entry proof changes that happened twice. The recipe may not have changed, but facilities change, bottling facilities change. A lot of people think that there's something that happens when whiskey sits in a bottle for a long period of time. There's some type of magic, that occurs there. And I imagine there probably is chemically. I mean, there's some oxygen in there. It might be a little, but there's going to be something happening. But it's not the same. It's not the same. And some people, they'll say, well, I only like Dusty Turkey, or I only like the turkey bottles where the turkey's looking at you, which is a reference to the older, label. And I just have to say, I had a post I did one time where I was kind of talking about wild turkey myths. And I think that's a myth. There is plenty of excellent wild turkey out there. You just have to find it. And starting with the single barrels, like Russell's Reserve, is a way that I would recommend doing that.
Yeah, it's always funny because we talk, and a lot of these bourbon, enthusiasts like me and you and everybody else will say like, oh, we love Dusties. We love this stuff that used to cost like $8.99 on the shelf.
Right. And
then you go and you talk to somebody in like their 60s or 70s. They're like, we wouldn't even drink that rock gut back.
It's crazy. It's good. Today I posted a review of a 1973 101 8-year that was gifted to me, and that was very nice. It was an Instagram user, Whiskey Grab. He's just a killer Dusty collector, and I'm very appreciative of that. It was phenomenal. I mean, there was just something about it. You just can't replicate it. And I mentioned that in my blog post, is that, there's something in here that you're just not going to be able to find in modern bourbons. I don't know. I know what the pieces of the puzzle kind of are, but I can't really fit them together. You can say entry proof, you can say cypress tanks, you can say old wood or select wood, or the water wasn't filtered to EPA standards and this type of stuff. But I've never found someone that had the definitive, this is why Dusty bourbon tastes. I do think that one reason why it tastes different, and this is something that Eddie has said, is that there's just older whiskey in it. I mean, they had a profile they were shooting for. The minimum, whiskey age is whatever's on the label, and there could be anything above that. So it might say 8 years, but there may be some 15-year-old juice in there just to kind of make it taste better. And I think that's what you're finding in a lot of these older Dusties. And I think it could happen again, maybe not exactly the same, but I don't think that Dusties necessarily are always better than a modern release. It just depends. But, everyone's got different palates, so.
No, totally.
That's something to factor too.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's always a continual topic of conversation. Everybody's like waiting for that next person that can recreate that dusty funk or whatever.
Right.
I think it's a dream that's never going to be able to be chased. Or somebody that says, "Oh, we want to try to recreate what you could find at Old Stitzel Weller." Like, you're just not going to be able to. And I think you brought up a lot of good points about having that age on the label and saying, well, there could have been 15, 18-year-old stuff in there. And that's probably what also attributed to those much darker releases too, right? I mean, spend that much time in the oak, it's gonna have a
absolutely
bigger effect on it rather than something that's just 6 or 8 years old. But
and it's not always the case, but usually if it's darker, it tends to have a lot more tannins, a lot more flavor to it. I think that, and a lot of times when you pour these dusty, even if they're 8 years, you'll look at for some reason 91 and 92 101 8 year is just amazingly dark. It's just, and it almost tastes port finished, which some people don't really like. I can appreciate it on occasion. I used to like it a lot more than I do now, but 91 and 92 for some reason it's just amazingly dark. I don't know. That's the 8 year. That was the last 2 years of 92 it switched to the old number 8. But I think there are some bottles out there technically that are 92 with the old 8 year at least the beginning of the year.
I guess another question is, when I hear you talking about, the donut, and I hear you talking about, these older bottlings, like what was that instinct, or what made you drive, other than your first taste of the Dusty, to say like, well, I want to try to try as many as I possibly can, or to own the collection? Like, I don't know, like what was your gearing to say like, I want to do this instead of going out and just trying to collect like every new Russell's Reserve that's going to be coming out on the market?
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
That instinct, or what made you drive, other than your first taste of the Dusty, to say like, well, I want to try to try as many as I possibly can, or to own the collection? Like, I don't know, like what was your gearing to say like, I want to do this instead of going out and just trying to collect like every new Russell's Reserve that's going to be coming out on the market, right? Like,
it is just I think that anybody that is an enthusiast in whiskey does this. There may be a few people that are so narrow focused, and someone could argue that I'm narrow focused by just being so much into wild turkey. But I'm always on the search. I'm always trying to find the next cool thing, And so, if I see a new label on the shelf, even if it's just a graphics change, I'm going to grab it and say, hey, is there something different here? I'm going to try to go out and find, every year I can find of every expression. a lot of times just to have material for my blog as well, because I feel like people want to know. I've had people send me emails say, hey, have you had, a 1990 whatever? And I'll say, well, I haven't yet, And so there's holes there to fill. Will I get all the way back to like 1942, 1018 year? Probably not, who knows? Maybe some benefactor will come my way and say, hey, I'm going to get all the wild turkeys for you. And I'm, yes, and I would love to have the old rye. My God, the Maryland rye and the Pennsylvania rye. But it's so hard to find those things. But I'm just on the search. I think everyone's on a journey, and they're trying to find something that clicks and makes them happy, And I just really have a lot of sympathy for these folks that go out and buy a lot of bottles, high-ended bottles, and trade for bottles, and they don't open them. We're the ones having fun. The ones that are opening them and sipping them, we're the ones having a great time. The ones just throwing them up on a shelf, I mean, I don't know, 10, 20 years from now, maybe we're in another glut era. Those things might not be worth a penny. Who knows, But, I feel sorry for folks that don't open up their bottles and enjoy them. I mean, I have a bunker with some, like I said, I probably got half of my bottles are still open. Unopened. But they will be soon.
Eventually. Yeah.
Eventually. Yeah. I mean, I can't have, you have to worry about the oxidation and that type of thing. So you can't just open them all,
Absolutely. There was one thing that you had mentioned in there that, we had talked to Jimmy about before when you had talked about the Pennsylvania and the Maryland rye. Mm-hmm. And that really is kind of like a huge unicorn, because I remember when we talked to him, we interviewed him, he said, back when, rye was king, he said, like, you couldn't make a Kentucky rye. Like nobody wanted a Kentucky rye. Like you were only a rye if you came from Pennsylvania or Maryland.
That's right.
I remember seeing a bottle, but never actually, it was sealed. Yeah. Like there's no way to be able to taste it. Right. But I think that's something that you got to put on your ultimate.
I would love to, I think it's neat too, because there's different recipes. I mean, the Baltimore rye is, I don't even know what that recipe is. What Baltimore Pure Rye's recipe was. I'm sure maybe someone out there does. The Pennsylvania rye that recipe I was able to track down through Dick Stoltz, that was the master distiller for the old Michter's. And anyway, it's different than what Jimmy's using now. Jimmy's doing the typical, Kentucky rye. But it would be nice to have them. They're unicorns. And, like I said, it's going to take a benefactor or someone coming in, because I can't do a second mortgage just to, get a bottle, So maybe one day.
Hit that. Somebody's got to hit the Mega Millions, right?
That's right.
And so when you mentioned, the rye again as well, I love always going back to this, because I think what Wild Turkey does is unique in the fact that they are one of the few rye producers that are continually, and they've been trying to continually do it and not just source it from MGP.
Right.
Is that one of the big reasons why you like to go, because it is that sense of pride, go with the Wild Turkey rye, is it sense of pride to do it? Or is it just because it's just damn good rye?
Yeah, it's damn good rye. But I'm not opposed to folks getting whiskey from MGP. I think that MGP makes nice bourbon and nice rye. I mean, I've got several bottles of Smooth Ambler, Old Scout in my cabinet, and I can enjoy that. It's a different profile. Their rye, is a lot higher in rye content. But I just, when I'm looking for a Kentucky rye, I started off appreciating Rittenhouse was a nice budget rye. And I got that through Sour Mash Manifesto. I think Jason Powell had written one time about, it was like one of his favorite, budget ryes. And I was, a big fan of that for a while. I tried Baby Saz. I never really got why anyone was into Sazerac or pays premium for it. I don't know, I guess because the connection to the antique collection. It did not click with me. Not that it was bad. It just wasn't my thing. When I tried 101 rye, it clicked. I mean, it was just, I appreciated it. And I've been able to have the oldest rye I've had is a 90. I had a 90 Christmas rye that someone gave me a nice sample of. And it tasted more bourbony than rye like. It did not taste like what 101 rye tastes like now. So I can see the pull there why people want to chase the old Christmas Rye, because it has such a nice bourbon flavor to it. But when I want a rye, I want a rye. So, 101 Rye appeals to me. And I love the single barrel rye as well, Russell's Reserve. Mm-hmm.
I remember when we interviewed Jimmy a long time ago, and we were sitting there in the old visitor center where they have a cabinet full of stuff. And I said, "Oh, look, you got the Christmas Rye in here." He goes, "What? This is a Christmas Rye. It's like this green and red label." And he was like, "That's what people call it."
How about that? Yeah. When I first heard about it, I'm like, why? At first I thought it was a Christmas release when I first, heard of the Christmas Rye. And I'd always kind of thought maybe that is something to do with, because, a lot of people enjoy a rye for at the holidays, Christmas time, and even myself. But then I was like, okay, it's the green and the red. I got you. Okay. But so he wasn't even aware of that, huh?
Yeah, it was funny though. I remember having that conversation and just looking in the cabinet, and he was just like, "I had no idea that's what people were calling it." So
yeah, you didn't get to try that pre-pro bourbon he has on the shelf, did you?
No.
Just McConaughey, right?
I guess, yeah. Somebody's. Yeah, I'm not giving as much publicity for him as Matthew is. So
yeah.
Got to give it to him.
That's right.
So I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit and kind of talk about something that is, more readily available on the shelves. And we've talked about it plenty of times already. And that's kind of looking at, sort of what the Russell Reserves picks have done. Mm-hmm. And we had actually posted on Instagram a while back about, waiting in line for like a Weller 107 store pick. Mm-hmm. Because people like me, we're just dumb idiots.
Yeah, I picked on you. That's right. Yeah.
And you were playing the angle that if everyone focused their attention on Russell Reserve's picks, you wouldn't have to stand in line. And so I know you have an article of 10 reasons why you should be buying Russell Reserve picks. Yeah. So what are some of those favorite reasons?
The profile, number one, if it didn't have a good profile, I wouldn't be going for it or promoting it like I do. I love that there's private selections, and they're so unique. One recipe, and you end up with sometimes two totally different tasting bourbons. Some more spicy, some sweeter. Some that are a little bit lighter than others. This type of thing. It's available. You can go pretty much to any quality store, and it's sitting there on the shelf at any time. It may not be a private selection, but I found that it's the non-private selection Russell's Reserve single barrels are consistent in quality. They may taste a little bit different, but Eddie is very good at picking consistent single barrels on that line. Kentucky Spirit is a little bit, I think it waxes and wanes, and there's a lot more. There's kind of a lower floor, there. But with Russell's Reserve, it's the floor and the ceiling are a lot closer, and it just stays in a nice, consistent quality. And the price is nice. I think that I've seen it as low as $35 locally, and I've seen it as high as like $55 for a standard bottle, which today's that's not that bad. Especially if you can find it for $35, I mean, shoot, bunker up some, if you can find it for $35, that's great,
Use your Kroger discount card there. If you can
yeah. But I think that those are some of the most, those are the most dominant reasons I can think of is the consistency, the quality, the profile. It's available. It's not priced too high. So that's what I'd say are some of my top reasons.
Yeah, I think there's two more that kind of flow in for me. When you talk about consistency, and I think it also goes back into one of those things where they had changed the barrel entry proof, right? When you go in at a lower proof, and by the time you're sitting there actually trying it in the rick house, it might be like 115, 118, something like that. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Russell's is bottled at 110? Is that what it is?
That's right.
Yeah, so you have only a few points of proof difference that are going into the actual end product, where you're not having to completely water it down.
That's right.
And so I think that's one of a big factor that plays into it from I guess you can say an enthusiastic standpoint, where everybody else in the market, I mean, if you look at somebody like Barton, like they're going at the highest proof, their barrels are like 140, 130 crazy amount.
Right.
And then you got to sit there and proof it down to at least 125 for their like full proof bottling. And sometimes that honestly, it kills the flavor of the bourbon. Now, do you think that they had this in mind a long time ago to kind of proof it down for this particular reason, so they wouldn't have to worry about necessarily, I guess you could say, trying to lose the quality, but get more of that just flavor that's usually coming from the bourbon in itself?
I think that from what I understand, the Russell's Reserve single barrel was kind of Eddie's thing. And he was looking for a very creamy profile, a very consistently creamy profile with a lot of caramel and this type of thing. And it was kind of his project. And I talked to him a little bit about this when I was able to meet him and Jimmy back after Thanksgiving last year. And I talked to him a little bit about how, and I'm not trying to get off the subject, this is related, but a lot of people want the 101 8-year back. They want an 8-year age statement on their 101. And the irony is that if they would just get Russell's Reserve single barrel, they're getting better than 101.8. They're getting something that the age range is 8 to 10 years. Usually on the private selects, they can get, up to about 10 years. And some of the early private selects were in the 11-year mark. But they're getting 110 proof, which is just 5 proof points away from the entry proof. When you had the old 101, the Dusty 101, you had a 107 entry proof, so you had 6 proof points of difference between entry proof and bottle proof, and only an 8-year age statement. So really, Russell's Reserve single barrel is kind of like the modern 101 8-year in a way. I think the profile, that's why I like the profile so much, because it doesn't taste diluted, even though there is some dilution there. Although there are some private selections. Jamie Ferris, Lincoln Road, had a couple barrels that he picked that were, the barrel proof was 111. So, I mean, it's pretty much bottled at barrel proof. It's very close to a barrel proof single barrel. But I think the Russell's Reserve single barrel is just about as close as you're going to get to 101 8-year nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is good in the fact that you do get that sort of something that's pretty close. You're not over diluting it, which is great. And I think that's what a lot of people that are in this quote unquote hobby can really appreciate as well.
Right.
The other thing is that, when you look at other people on the market, when you're looking at different single barrels, it could be from Buffalo Trace, it could be from Jim Beam or whoever. And the whole idea of it's non-chill filter, and everybody loses their shit. Right. And the thing is that like the Russell Reserve, it's always been non-chill.
That's right.
And people, like I said, they lose their shit because it's NCF. And then it's like, well, this has always been NCF. Like, you guys need to just start looking over here, right?
Yeah, I noticed that on that last Instagram post you had with the line, to the Old Weller Antique. And there were a couple of people like, is it NCF? Is it NCF? And I kind of thought about that same thing you said. I'm like, Russell's Reserve single barrel is always non-chill filtered, as is the rye, the single barrel rye. I think it does make a difference. There's more than a cosmetic thing there for sure. I think you're seeing it more in Scotch as well. I've noticed that there seem to be, at least, I'm not a big Scotch guy, but I've noticed a lot more of the Scotch labels and tubes, say non-chill filtered on it. So I think that's becoming kind of a new hype word maybe. But there's a difference. There's a difference there.
They were cool doing NCF before NCF was a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess how many different kind of Russell Reserve picks do you have in your stash right now? Is it getting to the point where you're losing count?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably at least 25 different ones in there. There's got to be at least 10 plus open. I do go through them. I mean, I don't hold any for rants. And once I open it, I do try to finish it in a reasonable amount of time because I don't want oxidation or things like this. I also sample out to folks that I trade with and try to make sure that we all have an appreciation. If I find something really good, I want to share it. But I'd say, at any given point in time, if you were to look in my cabinet, there's going to be over 20 Russell's Reserve single barrels easily in there. That's probably what I enjoy the most is Russell's Reserve single barrel. That's what I tend to want more often than not. If I'm like outdoor grilling or something, I'll just pour 101, because if I'm going to be out in the smoke and all that, I'm not going to take a real nice private selection and put it out in the environment and have like a fly run, land in my cup or something like that. He'd probably have a good time, but I wouldn't. And so I'm just going to have like 101 or something, out there. But
I don't know. Maybe that fly is the key to recreating that dusty funk. You have no idea.
That's right. I actually did watch a fly go into my glass one time, and he didn't make it. But I'm sure he had a good little few seconds there of pleasure. But golly, it happens. It happens.
And we've always talked about on the show before about, like we always say to ourselves, like, is there a single barrel or a store pick that we've ever like lost our mind over, that we're like, this is too good? Like, have you ever had one of those that you've go ahead? I mean, which one is it you said that you've had and you're like, I wish I could find as many bottles
if I could get a million of the Woodland Wine short barrel pick, I think it was 16,490. I think I'm going off the top of my head here. It was like a 42 bottle, barrel. And, but man, was it good. I mean, and I've got one, I was able to get one. I haven't opened that yet. I had a nice sample, prior to it. And then, some weeks later after posting my review, I had someone that was very nice to, offer me one. And so I'm kind of saving it for a little special occasion, but, I mean, it's killer. I mean, it really is. I mean, they picked a damn. I even sent Eddie a message and said, "Hey, man, I think you messed up. You should have just kept this one and put it somewhere." And I'm sure he got a chuckle out of it. But yeah, it's a good one. That's a good one. That Woodland Wine. Both of the Woodland Wine picks were excellent. They really were. But that one was just, it was very unique. It had a very nice earthy, I'd argue there's some little bit of some dusty notes in there, especially on the earthy side. Jamie Ferris picks great Russell's Reserve single barrels. He's very consistent. His picks are very consistent and in quality and profile. And I have a few from him that are real nice. There's one that he picked with Dixon Dedman. That's excellent. And then Dixon sent me a pick of his, which I'm very grateful for. That is excellent. There's a lot of them out there, but that Woodland Wine pick, it just sticks with me. I mean, I'm so glad I have me one that I can open. I'll probably do that Christmas time or something.
That kind of just goes back to one of the theory that Ryan, the other co-host that isn't on the show today, he always has, that short barrels, there's something to them. Or
there is
something to them. I don't know what it is.
I'm a believer now. Just killer.
So, with that one or any other ones, is there a favorite? A few people in the chat, Brandon Griffiths and Ryan Alves, they're asking, like, is there a favorite spot in the rick house or a floor for Russell's Reserve picks that you've seen that stood out above things? Because some people, he's heard that warehouse K, floor 5. Like, is that like a real thing at all?
I really like G and I really like B. Those are two of my favorites. A lot of the picks I've had, and same thing with the Kentucky Spirit. There's a lot of nice Bs. B and G just are my favorites. K is nice. I've had several Ks that are really spicy, like almost like a Four Roses in nature. Like maybe like a K yeast or F yeast or something like that from Four Roses. I get a lot of that out of Warehouse K. There was a pick that the Annapolis Whiskey Society did last year that was a K pick, and it was almost like Russell's Reserve single barrel rye. Like it had such a spice presence. I swear you could give it to someone and they were like, "Wow, is this a rye?" So K is very unique. That short barrel from Woodland Wine, I believe, was from M. Shawan's had a nice pick from O, I think. So it really, like I said, my favorites are B and G. I don't really have a favorite floor. 4, 5, and 6 tend to be where I find the best ones. You don't even really see low floor picks anymore. At least I don't. You see them early. If you look at the early Russell's Reserve single barrels in 2013, 2014, those private selections, you'll see a lot of second floor and third floor. But most of what you see now is 4th, 5th, maybe 6th. But definitely, I think if you go G, you're going to have a winner more often than not. Matter of fact, I think that's going to be a post I do pretty soon. Is I'm thinking about doing a post where it's like where I just take all maybe 3 to 5 different single barrels from the same rick house. Kind of like I had a post with Kentucky Spirit where I did that with B. I think I'm going to do a G with Russell's Reserve single barrel. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, you could
comparison.
You could go beyond that. You could get like 20 or 30 of them. And you could do like a magic quadrant, right? You could like try to push them like, where they are and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know if I'd even be able to like type after that. It's hard enough doing 3. I mean, comparisons are a lot of work. They really are. The Russell's Reserve single barrel comparisons are fun because I like to do my comparisons all, one time. And, at 110 proof, comparing 3 whiskeys, that's tough. Comparing 5, that would be pretty. That'd be pretty difficult. And to still, the nose might work out, but then by the time you get to the finish, it's going to be I'm going to be second guessing myself. Am I doing this right? So 3, I think, is my limit on that. But I might stretch to 5. We'll see.
You just got to take the scientific method and test it at least 3 times. Yeah. If your tests are confirmed, then you're doing it right. So you do it multiple times.
Yeah. Hit the floor a couple times. Gotcha.
So I want to switch gears again a little bit. As we start wrapping this up and kind of look at the Wild Turkey like limited releases, right? Because when you look at it from a market perspective, it gets a little bit of attention at first, and then it dies. It doesn't get many accolades when you look at things like Diamond and Masters Keep. What's your honest opinion when it comes to these? Do you think that are they deserving of the price tag? Is it just kind of like they're just trying to satisfy a segment of the market when people see $100 price point and they're like, okay, this looks like a good Christmas gift? Like, what's your thought and ideas on some of these limited releases that are coming from them?
Okay, before we get to the profiles, if we want to talk about price, I don't think that they're priced unfairly, especially if you look at something like Pappy Van Winkle, for example. Look at the price, of a 15-year Pappy, and then look at the price of Diamond. Are they that far apart? Because Diamond was 13 to 16 years or so. Now if the Pappy 15 is 107 or something, so there's a higher proof there. But I don't think that they're asking anything crazy, especially like with the 17-year Masters Keep, a 17-year bourbon. To ask for, I think the retail price was like $150, I think, for Masters Keep 17. But you could find it. You could find it at Costco for $90 at some places. But I think I picked mine up in like the 110, 120 range, something like that.
I've even seen people that have posted and they're like, there's like 30%, like some people show like there's like 20 to 30% off like Wild Turkey products. And they're like, yeah, I'll just buy like 3 of them. Right. So,
but a 17-year straight bourbon whiskey from the distillery, not some mysterious orphan found this somewhere, who knows where it's from, whatever. Barterhouse, 20-year bourbon whiskey that was like $80 or something. That's a deal. But that had this hokey story with it, and where did it come from? With the Wild Turkey 17-year, it was 17 years from Wild Turkey. And I think what they were asking was fair. The same thing with decades. It was a 10 to 20 year batch, and I think they were asking the same price as the 17-year. Profile wise, I think that most people are going to appreciate decades over the 17-year Masters Keep. To me, I enjoy them about the same. I think I tend to be more of a decades fan more often than not. But if I'm wanting that really oak profile, I'm going to go to the 17-year. The nose on the 17 is just really, really, really amazing in my opinion. The finish is a little bit lacking on the 17 year, but it's not. I rated it very well and it deserved it. But I think that why they sit on the shelves, it's the big joke. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. They're not weeded bourbons. They're not. They don't have that halo around it. Like it goes from Pappy, to Weller and that whole Buffalo Trace halo. They're completely outside of that. So there's not any hype there. And I'm not comparing, saying that those Pappy doesn't compare or something like that. I'm not trying to get into that debate. I'm just trying to say that there is no halo hype around the Wild Turkey releases. And I think that's why people missed out on 98, because it did not have that halo of hype. And people walked past it. They were like, "Oh, it's $250 or whatever for them." And then it was gone because it was only like 3,000, 4,000 bottles. There wasn't a lot. And now look at the price of 98 on the secondary. It's just crazy. I'd never pay it. It's a great bourbon whiskey, but the secondary prices are ridiculous. But I think people were like, I passed right by that, and. I think that may be the case with some of these, like decades of stuff. 5 years from now, there may be, somebody going, God, I walked right past 17, or I walked right past decades, and I should have grabbed it, And we'll see.
Yeah, I slept on 98. I saw the $250 price tag, and I guess it is a hype factor. It is something that it doesn't seem that Wild Turkey gets a lot of the credit that it deserves. They do a great job when it comes to this mid-tier single barrel Russell Reserves. But when it comes to this super premium limited release, it is something that doesn't necessarily get the hype train rolling. I don't know why.
I don't either.
This was back, I think Russell Reserve 98 came out in 2014, 15, something like that.
2015 was 98.
Yeah. And so, that was kind of when podcast was just starting to get up, and you start getting into a lot of groups and you start learning about different things, and you're kind of like, I think I'm going to go ahead and pass on that, because this was, I think, during the same, like the one like after Diamond or something, and I don't think Diamond really made the waves that it was really hoping to, and so everybody they just literally just skipped on it. Like I did.
I enjoyed Diamond. I think it not being 101 proof, hurt it right off the bat, just on paper. The irony is, it's close to barrel proof or batch proof or whatever you want to say. At the 91 that it's at, it's pretty. I think Eddie even mentioned that on your podcast, that Diamond is fairly close to batch proof. And I've sent Diamond to people as a blind sample, and they've come back like, "Wow, this is great. I love this." And I'm like, "Well, it's Wild Turkey Diamond." They're like, "Oh, really?" And it has a more of a classic Wild Turkey vibe that you find in some of the 2000s 101. So if you're looking to find that classic profile from some of the 101s from 2000, and you can't find it without going to secondary, or you don't want to go dusty hunting or whatever, then come off the money and just and buy Diamond, and I think you'll be very happy. The packaging was also a step down from Tradition. And I think that hurt Diamond, because Tradition, had that metal base and the solid wood box, and you had to press these buttons, and it's like, and then, this bottle with this massive, copper base, and it was amazing. It's unbelievable. I think even was it Lloyd Christmas that mentioned that the Tradition was kind of one of these releases where it was like, was this thing even meant to be open, because it's so the work done to it to make it the presentation look so nice was just so immense. But so you go from that, and then you go to this plastic thin clear sliding thing with the bottle. There was a similar bottle to Tradition in the shape, but it didn't have the base.
It's like a bottle of Booker's is what it kind of reminded everybody of. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a Booker's box, and then it's 91 proof, and so it just kind of sat there, because it's only 91 proof, and it just looks like a bottle of Booker's. I can get Booker. Back then you get Booker's for $50, in 2014. So I think that it had a lot of little things like that hurt it. But the profile itself, it tastes fine. I don't know, it's no Tradition. It was a step down from tradition and profile, but it's still a good pour. I mean, I enjoy Diamond.
And so, did you sleep on Russell's Reserve 98 as well, or did you have the hindsight to say I'm going to at least get one of these?
My area did not even get any. I think that South Carolina got like one case or something. It was like one of these things where I don't even think it even hit my general area. And by then, I was really just more into the standard offerings of wild turkey, and I had just kind of started venturing into the dusty stuff and all that. It was a little bit too late, I think, by the time that it come out. I never saw it. I remember passing on Booker's Rye at retail, and I kind of kicked myself for that, but only because I'd trade it for Dusty Turkey. But I miss 98. Hopefully I won't miss on 2002. Hopefully I won't miss on 2002.
Don't tell anybody about that yet, man.
I know. Well, I got everybody mad at me for talking about the Jewish whiskey company, the single cask nation releases. I posted that, and I got messages. Oh man, I was hoping to keep that a secret, So a lot of people, they don't want the word getting out on some of these newer things yet.
Cat's out of the bag on that one.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, it also kind of goes back, when you're getting into this hobby, 2014 timeframe, 2015 as well. When you see a $250 price tag, you're like, well, I don't know if I could ever do that. And then today you're like, I'll drop that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. It's funny. And it's funny how it's changed. There was a point in time where because I don't have a lot of money I can just throw out and just buy, I've got kids, I've got responsibilities. But what I can do sometimes is I can arrange some really nice trades. And I've gone out and found for people that are Scotch fans, they'll be familiar with Glendronach 15 year, the revival. And my area had 15s everywhere, So I was just going and getting 15s and then trading them, for other bourbons that I'd want because it had this, hype around it. And so you kind of have to be smart with what you buy. Either you're buying it to open it and enjoy it. And if that's the case, don't drop a high dollar on something, unless it's special. But if you're buying something high dollar to trade for something that you are going to enjoy, I think that that's smart. That's a smart shopper and a smart enthusiast. And I think, and that's fine. It's because it's going to end up with somebody that does want it. And so I see no problem with that. And that's kind of the angle I go.
That's good. So we're going to wrap it up. I got one last question.
Okay.
So I know you said that you kind of talk to Eddie on email every once in a while. At some point, is Eddie or maybe some of the PR people at Wild Turkey ever going to hook you up with a face-to-face with Matthew McConaughey so you can kind of really go back and forth on who's the real fan here?
Yeah, I'll message him every once in a while on Instagram. To me, the rock stars are Jimmy and Eddie. McConaughey's cool. I mean, I enjoy True Detective. I enjoy a lot of his work in his movies. And I think that the video he made for Wild Turkey initially was amazing. I mean, it's hard to watch that and not want to go pour 101, I think my wife would like a signed bottle of Long Branch if anybody is out there listening.
Everybody's wife does.
Yeah. When I got to meet Jimmy and Eddie last year, I don't know what I said to Jimmy. It was like meeting Santa Claus when you're a kid. I was just like, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I said, it was just so cool. And Eddie and I had some nice, cool talks, He's a very laid back fella, and I enjoyed talking to him. I was a little bit nervous because it wasn't too far after I had written that 1894 review, which was kind of a little tough one. But he was a real cool guy to chat with. But yeah, McConaughey, he's doing a great job. I think he was hired on to bring in some of the female consumers and maybe some of the younger, 20s, kind of folks looking for, just an everyday drink. And I think he's doing a good job at that. And that's a great thing for the brand. But I'm excited for the future. Real quick to mention before we get off, I think that it's really neat that you have Jimmy, Eddie, and Bruce all at one time. And from what I understand, Bruce has moved back to Kentucky, and he's going to start taking, steps to becoming a distiller himself. Has that ever happened? Have you ever had 3 generations of father to son actively producing Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey at the same time? I don't know. Maybe going back to pre-pro stuff, maybe. But I don't even know if it's existed in Scotch, but it's a very cool thing. I think that they've got something very genuine and very unique that other brands would probably love to have. And that's the thing too. A lot of the other brands, master distillers from these other brands, they respect Wild Turkey. They respect the Russells, and they know that they make a quality product. And I think that the rest of the world is starting to figure that out now too.
That's a great way to sign off. The only thing I could think of is beam in the nose, but I don't think Freddie was around distilling at the same time Booker was. But we can let somebody else try to comment and get mad at us on Twitter.
Absolutely.
Making the wrong statement. But, David, I did want to say thanks again for coming on. I want to let you give one more plug and let people know how they can find out more about you, how they can get on your website and Instagram and all that other good stuff.
Okay. Well, RareBird101.com is my blog, and check it out if you're interested in more information about different wild turkey expressions. There's tons of reviews on there. I just posted my 101st review this morning, so that's kind of a cool little milestone. And I'm on Instagram at RareBird101. Follow me, send me a message. I'll be happy to talk with you. And who knows what's coming down the road? I've talked about maybe working on a book. Looking at doing something like that. Who knows? We'll see. But if someone wants to send me an email or a message via Instagram or my blog, I'll answer it.
And it sounds like he also happily accepts dusty wild turkey samples too.
Yes, anytime. Anytime.
So make sure you're following Dave on all those social media channels. Make sure you're following us as well. Bourbon Pursuit on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you like what you hear, make sure you support the podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. If you have any show suggestions, people you want to see, and this was actually a show suggestion from a Patreon listener. So thank you to everybody that also helps give us ideas of who we should have on the show. Who do you want to hear from? And what are the topics that you're interested in? It actually makes my job a whole heck of a lot easier. So please keep those coming in. Send us an email, theduo, THEDUO @bourbonpursuit.com. With that, Dave, thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to everybody next week.